and Publishing. I am your host, Yvonne Mason. The other host that is with me is my right arm, my sidekick, my confidant. I can't do without her, my other half, Mary Brotherton. And today it's all about Mary. We have been running this show for
Woohoo!
over a year now, and we never interviewed Mary. Mary is a very well known author. She had her own Be Unique magazine that was very successful. It was a nonprofit magazine. Mary and I have known each other for 20 years. And anytime that we've done something, Mary says, I've never led her astray. So we're going to start at the beginning and just let Mary talk about who she is, how she got here, and what's been going on before we talk about all of the books that are out there and what we had been talking about prior to going live. So, have you recovered from yesterday's workshop debacle where you got choked?
Yesterday's workshop was so good. We had three people in the chat. We had Dar J. Bonnie Clark, and Gwendolyn Law. They joined us for live chat, and we talked about spammers and scammers and predators, which, predators are one of Yvonne's favorite things to talk about because she
Oh,
writes
yeah.
true crime. And before today's show, we were talking about, is it Gerald or Gerard
Gerard.
Schaefer?
Gerard. Gerard Schaefer.
Gerard Schaefer. He was a law enforcement officer who preyed on young women. And Yvonne wrote the first true crime story about him called Silent Scream. And that book was translated into French. It was translated into, turned into a documentary in France and New Zealand, and I'm not sure where else,
Here in
but
the States.
it's been
Everywhere.
highly promoted all over the world. Um, so Yvonne likes talking about predators, but the predators we were talking about were the ones that prey on new authors. They find strange ways to flatter you and tell you how wonderful you are. Yvonne and I already know how wonderful our authors are. If you take 100 people, put them in a room, random people, 95% of them are probably going to say, I want to write a book. 5% of those actually do it and get it published. Anybody can write a book. Not everybody can be an author. So we talked about that yesterday. We talked about some of the scams that are out there and how to avoid them. Basically, you just ignore the emails or the DMs they send you. But Yvonne and I can turn those emails around and make them work for us. And we don't charge a thing at Midnight Publishing. And we don't ask our writers to jump through any hoops. We just ask them to trust the process and follow our very simple guidelines.
And that
So,
brings us to Mary's journey with Midnight Publishing. So let's
because I
talk
didn't
about
trust the process.
let's talk about your journey first as an author, a writer, a journalist, and then how you got here. I know you've been a journalist for a hot minute.
Yes, I've always been a writer. I've always been an editor. My mother told me that when I was 4 years old, I would take my crayons and I would edit the cereal boxes. I'd find mistakes on cereal boxes and fix them. And now, I don't know how I got the cereal box because there were 8 of us in my family, 8 children, but I guess I was the one with the crayon and just snagged it up. Of course, when I was 4, there weren't 8. That came by the time I was 12. But my first marriage, I was writing all the time. I was writing a lot of poetry. And the poems, they came easy. They were from the anxiety of being in a bad marriage. I wouldn't have admitted it was a bad marriage because, I mean, I made that bed, I had to lie in it. But he told me that my stories and my poems were a nice hobby, but I should not put much effort into it. He was the kind of person that felt like if I had time for creative endeavors, then I had too much time on my hands. If I had time to take a walk or do any kind of self-improvement exercises, I had too much time on my hands. The house was still not up to his specifications. The yard wasn't clean enough or trimmed enough. The garden needed more hoeing or whatever. So he was a workaholic, and he wanted everybody else to be one too. So after dealing with his, oh, there's somebody saying good morning, ladies. Who is that?
I don't know.
Gwendolyn, hi there, darling. You with that mentality as well. Yes, darling, I did. I had it. So after 25 years, I was a slow study. 25 years of being verbally and mentally and emotionally, psychologically, and financially abused. Never once did he hit me. I remember going to bed many nights praying that he would hit me, because if he hit me, I'd have a bruise. And if I could show that bruise to somebody, they could understand. But on the surface, it looked like a good marriage. And I've always been a prayerful person. And I used to, well, I still do, but not as much. In those days, I would just go and hide off into my room. I would just say, I'm going to go pray. And that, fortunately, was one of the few times that I could be left alone. If I was praying, nobody bothered me. And there were many days, every day, in fact, for over 2 years, I would hear a voice tell me, Mary, if you want to live, leave. And I didn't understand how that could happen because he never hit me. He never physically assaulted me. So I must have been imagining this. But after a while, I realized that the death was not a physical death. It was a spiritual death. He was slowly killing my spirit. So when I made my great escape, I mean, he helped me. He helped me pack the truck, and he helped change the locks on the door, put in the air conditioning in the window, and set up the furniture. He was a good helper because he thought I was just doing it to make a point. And I told my son, when my son told me, Dad thinks you're just trying to make a point, I said, son, you don't pack up Christmas decorations and Tupperware to make a point. You just pack up a suitcase and you walk out. I wasn't making a point. I was making my great escape. And I did not even plan it this way, but I left him on the 4th of July weekend, my Independence Day. And so, fast forward, I ended up finding someone who adores me, who loves me. He treats me like the queen that I am. Actually, he calls me the chocolate goddess. But, and there's Dar. Hello, my lovely. Curtis has given me permission to give myself permission. He has given me the autonomy to trust myself. He has empowered me to empower myself. The man believes in me, and he has believed in me for many years, and he has he's been waiting for me to publish my book. Gwendolyn says, Independence Day took a new meaning. Yes, ma'am. I met Curtis, and I couldn't believe him, he was true. You know, he was too good to be true. So I kept him at arm's length for quite a while, and then when I finally decided, okay, I'm going to start a life with him, I did, and I've done all kinds of things over the course of the last, how long have I known now? 28 years now. So, I mean, we had a life in Atlanta, we came to Florida, and the whole time he's asking me, when are you going to start writing? When are you going to start writing? I know you want to be a writer. And I worked for many, many years as a journalist. I got paid to write. I got paid better to write for somebody else than I get paid to write for myself. But nothing has given me so much joy as doing my own. Gwendolyn says, you just described my Merlin. I like your Curtis. Yeah. They are kind of like magic men, aren't they? 3 years, 4 years ago, 2022, I started hearing more of these voices. I mean, I've always talked to dead people and they talk back to me. Some of them are really sassy. But I've always heard from angels. My mother told me that when I was a young child, one of her relatives wanted to have me committed because I talked to people that the relative couldn't see. And my mother said, she's just talking to angels, leave her alone. And so for several years, and I've had 2 psychics come up to me and say, Mary, I have a message for you. The angels are saying you need to finish your book. And I've always been writing books. Yvonne knows that I've got a computer full of unfinished and some finished books that just need me to tweak them one last time, send them on to her. But I knew which book the angels were talking about, and there were some dead people also that were coming through. But I've always been a smart ass. Darja said, beautiful reset. Yes, ma'am, it was indeed. I always would say, well, I don't know which book they want me to write. I got so many books. And they would just look at, the psychics would look at me and say, they say you know. So finally, 4 years ago, I got out of my way and I wrote this book, Go With Angels. Now, most of these stories are also in Faith and Folly. This book I did the hardest way. I self-published it. I shopped around for printers and I formatted it. Well, actually, Jennifer East, who worked with me on Be Unique, she formatted the book for me, which is really sad because I think if you can see that font's like 9 point. Too small, way too small. But we printed this book. I bought 500 copies because I was under the delusion, like so many first-time authors, this is going to be a bestseller. This book, people won't be able to resist it. Now, I've sold it to people in bulk. I've sold as many as 10 to one person. I have sold it to their local stores, buy it at wholesale. Okay, fine, whatever. I still have boxes and boxes and boxes because I had to, in order to be able to afford to sell it for $10, and I didn't want to sell it for any more than that, I had to buy 500 copies. And that made it hard to sell because now I have to go out and sell them. They're not on Amazon. They're not easily accessible. Whatever. Let's see what my next book was. My next book, actually, yeah, this was my next book. It was also my first book on Midnight Publishing. This book helped me learn to trust the process. It didn't help me learn to release it and let it go. That's another thing that I've had to learn the hard way. Because the first time I did this one, I learned my lesson, I thought, because I printed this book first myself. There's a fix for that. Send it to Yvonne. Oh, darling, Yvonne has all of my first self-published books. That was my easy way to start trusting her. If she could republish my books on Amazon, and see, I published them as paperbacks, but I could not figure out Kindle and forget about Audible and hard copies. Oh no. So, and when I published these, that was before Audible was using AI. So I would have been recorded myself. Too much trouble. So when I finished this little angel book, that was another one that came from a voice telling me, I want you to write a book about angels for children. And I want to share something. Talk about dead people. This picture in the very, very back, I didn't even realize it. Just like with Yvonne, she'll look at my books and she'll go, oh, If I Could Be a Giant is really a book about anti-bullying. This is the spitting image of my grandson, Zachary. But I didn't see that until Curtis saw the first copy. Curtis didn't even know I was working on this book. I just wrote it and sent it out and did everything. But then he got a copy of this book and he looked at it and goes, that looks just like Zachary when he was a child. Well, Zachary had a brother 2 years before Zachary was born. Jacob was stillborn. And because of that, Curtis believes that Jacob was the one who was talking to me, telling me to write a book about angels for children. I don't question these things. So when Linda Humphreys...
When you start questioning, that's when you start doubting.
Yeah. And I have no doubts. And the more I work with Midnight Publishing, any doubts that I might have just dissipate. But I finished this little book and I showed it to Linda Humphrey when she came to visit from Tennessee. And she said, if I could get somebody to illustrate my book for me, then I could finish it because my illustrator has flaked out on me. And I said, I'm so sorry. Good luck with that. I can't help you. And one morning, I think it was about 6 weeks later, I woke up and I heard God. There's no doubt. And y'all, if you haven't heard these voices, you don't understand. But Yvonne could call me on the phone from an unknown number, and I hear her voice and I know exactly who she is. My husband Curtis could call me from an unknown number and I would recognize his voice in a heartbeat. I know when my grandson speaks to me, my deceased mother speaks to me, Curtis's mother, I know when it's the voice of God. And there's a difference between being nudged by the Holy Spirit and when Jesus talks and when God speaks. And when I say God, I'm talking about the overall, all-powerful one you cannot ignore. But I woke up one morning and God the Father said, I need you to call Linda Humphrey right now and tell her you will illustrate her book for her. Okay. I will. Because I have learned the hard way what ignoring that voice can do. It's not a pretty sight. It doesn't end well. So I called Linda Humphrey and I said, hey, I'm just going to cut to the chase. I'm going to tell you right now that God said I need to illustrate your book. And she burst out in tears. She said, I just told God yesterday that I was going to give up on this dream because I don't know what to do with these illustrations. I said, he told me I have to do it. So I used AI and the other programs that I used to create the images for her book. And once again, we did it the hard way. We sent it to a printer and we got the books printed, got them dropped, shipped to Linda at her house. She paid for everything. Oh, I forgot to tell you. You know, I did 500 of the first book. I did only 300 of this. Like I said, I thought I learned my lesson. And I think Linda printed 150, which is why her book is bigger, but it's also more expensive because it's very detailed, very complicated. Got the print books, no problem. I spent the next year fiddling with Amazon, trying to get Linda's book published just as a paperback on Amazon. And it was such a complicated ordeal that Linda was pulling out my hair. And then, before I get to where Yvonne comes into this picture, I'm going to tell you that I was told that I needed to write a book called A Journey with Angels. And that's the book, this is the one I'm working on transferring over to Yvonne, because I did this not just the hard way, but the super hard way. I created all the images in Microsoft Publisher. I didn't create it in Word because, let's see if I can just pull up one of the more ridiculous pages. Here you go. I have the image on at the end of every chapter, and then I have journal pages. It's a journal, and it's a how-to communicate with angels. It tells you all the many things that you can do that to reach out to them, the things that these angels manifest through. This book was another book that was inspired. I heard voices telling me what to do and how to do it. They told me when to stop. They told me that 23 angels was more than enough. I didn't need to do a 24. I wanted 25, but they said stop. So I stopped. This book, I made it have a soft touch feel because I wanted it to be special. But I only printed 150. Guess how many boxes I still have?
Several.
150 of those, 300 of the little angel book, 500 of the first angel book, and I'm still stuck with boxes of books. So I did that, and I remember thinking, okay, I've got a moment. Whew, I can take a break. And they said, nope, we got an idea for you. Now, more than 25 years ago, my first cousin Linda, something about our cousins named Linda, they're very special.
Yes, they are.
But my cousin Linda Craven had a heart transplant. And when she had the transplant, I had this brilliant inspiration, I don't know, I guess it wasn't inspired, it was just Mary thinking out loud. I'm going to write a book about her transplant. And y'all, it was going to be a Hallmark type book because in my mind, Gwendolyn's mama's name is Linda. She knows how special they are. Um, in my mind, it was going to be a book, and then the Hallmark Channel was going to pick it up and run with it and make a movie out of it. It's going to be a woman who had a heart transplant and a man who lost a wife from a tragic accident, and then he falls in love with the woman who had the heart transplant, and he finds out that that was the heart that had belonged to his wife. And that was my sappy idea. But I couldn't get it written. I could not, I just had, I knew I was going to call it Sally's Heart. That's all I knew. But then along comes Be Unique. I created this charity and we had a magazine, and I'm thinking this is the perfect way to sell my book. So I started an online store, and I had my other 3 books on there. And I was selling them, sold some of them overseas, and we had, because of our podcast, had a show called Go With Angels. And so I was selling my books and talking about angels and reading stories and interviewing other people who had angelic encounters and near-death experiences. And one of our volunteers said, when you do go, she saw the angel book, and she said, if you do another children's book, I'd love to illustrate it for you, and I'll donate my services. Well, that's when Sally's Heart came about. Jay Sari sat at the van, she illustrated the pictures, and they're cute, little images. Sally is special to my cousin because that was a woman who was on the donor list along with Linda, but she died before a matching donor could be found for her. So I did that book. But this book, Mary got really smart, and I spent months on Amazon. In between trying to get Linda Humphrey's book on Amazon, I did, I got Sally's Heart on, and I was able to get it in Kindle and paperback. I think the Kindle, I don't know. I think Amazon just said, she's stupid, put it up there anyway, nobody will buy it. But I got it up there. Now, during all of this, probably about 8-year span of time that I was, because Be Unique lasted about 10 years, and then I retired from that. But prior to retiring from Be Unique, in that time frame, I had a man that I had dated briefly before, well, actually, around the time that I was dating Curtis. I met Curtis. He was too good to be true. I had to subject myself to torture. So I dated this other guy. I dated a few other guys while I was trying to figure out if Curtis was for me or not. And Curtis was in Florida. I was in South Carolina. What he doesn't know kind of hurt him. I'm just having a grand old time. I got married at 18. I never had a chance to sow my wild oats. So I was sowing them at 40. So anyway, I dated this guy. I dismissed him. And then started a life with Curtis. And 10 years, more than 10 years after, I got my time frame all wrong. But anyway, many years after I was married to Curtis, I got a message on Facebook from this guy that I had dated 18 years ago. And I thought, no big deal. He was a guy, he was not a bad person, I didn't think. So I said hello. Big mistake. The man was garbage. He was very inappropriate with me. He was disgusting. He was nasty. And he was cheating on his wife, and he wanted to cheat on his wife with me. And so I immediately blocked him. When I blocked him, I went down the hall and I told Curtis, I said, "You'll never guess who I just heard from." Curtis, being the gossipy man that he is, said, "Let me see the messages." I'm like, "I blocked him." He said, "Well, unblock him. I want to see what he wrote." And Curtis's eyes got bigger and bigger and bigger, because the whole time that I had this man blocked, he didn't know he was blocked, so he was continuing to send me these very inappropriate, very, I don't even know another word for it, inappropriate messages. Curtis read them, and he said, "You should download those messages and use them in the book you're going to write." I'm like, "Oh, no, I am not writing a book about this. Oh, no. Hell no. No." Y'all, I went to bed that night, and Curtis asked me, he said, "Think about it." I'm like, no need to think about it. I'm not writing this book. How would I even do that? I wouldn't even know where to begin. The very next morning, I woke up, and it was as if there was a teleprompter coming down like this with the words from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. I knew all the dialogue. I knew all the characters. I knew exactly what I needed to do. And I told Curtis, I said, "Dinner's going to be on your own tonight, and maybe tomorrow night, and maybe for the next umpteen nights, because I have to write that book." He goes, "What book?" Enter
The one you told me to write.
steps. I wrote this book over the course of, I don't know, from that point to 8 years later, I wrote the book. And that includes writing it, revising it, sending it out, getting it critiqued, having it edited, looking at it going, I got to do this all over again. Because that's how novels do you sometimes. So I wrote that book. I put it out on Amazon, and I got as far as print, the soft, what do you call it? Paperback. And the Kindle. And I started working on the hardcover. Y'all, that's hard. Doing it in 4 format, I didn't even think about doing it in Audible.
Because Audible wasn't ready.
No. So I got all this done, and I go on about my business, and continuing with Be Unique. But then there came a point when Be Unique no longer fulfilled me. It was no longer what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And all I wanted to do at that point was write more books. But I still didn't know all the details. I didn't know what God had in mind. So I had been seeing, around that time, I started seeing a little bit about Midnight Publishing, and I saw Yvonne's story about how her publisher died. She was just helping her friends and getting her own books turned around on Amazon. I wasn't going to add to her burden with my silliness. But I did retire. It worked out splendidly. Because around that time, I started my succession plan with Be Unique. Talked to my board of directors. I said, we've got 2 options. I can close down the organization, or I can step away. Grateful I was smarter than Mary my first time around. Thank you, Yvonne.
You're welcome.
Gwendolyn, I'm not that smart. But I retired from Be Unique. I gave the board of directors everything they needed to carry on without me. And they carried on for about 3 months, and then they decided to fold. And that's fine. I was definitely at peace with this. And so I went to lunch with Yvonne, and we're talking about Midnight Publishing. She's telling me all that she can do and this and that and the other. She hadn't done any children's books yet. I think this started as a phone call, because when we went to lunch, I gave you the thumb drive. And on that thumb drive, I had everything she needed to redo Sally's Heart, My Angel book, and the Cornfield Flyers of East Tennessee.
But before the thumb drive and the phone call, we had been to lunch and you were going off on a tangent when I said stop. And then we met again for
Actually,
lunch.
that was our, yes. So I gave her the thumb drive. Y'all, don't hate me. Don't hate me, please. I love you all. I love Yvonne. I adore Yvonne. But I was testing her. I walked in there. We sat down for lunch, and I go, here's the thumb drive. Let's see what you can do with what's on it.
I love a challenge.
And I was testing her. If she could turn the Cornfield Fires of East Tennessee around, I figured 6 months maybe. I worked on it for a year. Still couldn't get it accepted by Amazon. 36 hours or less, I think it was more like 30 hours after that lunch meeting, Yvonne says, guess what? Linda Humphrey just sold her first copy of Cornfield Flyers on Amazon. I'm like, what? How is that even possible? She said, well, I just told Amazon what I wanted to do, and they told me what I needed, and we made it happen. I couldn't figure out the formula. And y'all, I know I'm smart. I'm not stupid. But Amazon was kicking my butt 7 ways from Sunday.
Well, and the backstory to that.
So I didn't think.
The backstory to that, before she goes any further, is everything that Mary was doing for the Cornfield Flyers of East Tennessee, she was trying to put up under Linda's account. So all of the revisions went to Linda's email. And you can't do that. If you're going to do this, it has to be in a controlled environment. So when I put that book up and Amazon would kick it back and say, you're outside of the frame, this is what you need to do, I would take where I was reviewing that book, and then I would go back to my file and I would make adjustments. And
Gwendolyn said I can't figure out the formula either.
Part of the formula is you don't need all the background noise on a children's book. And you have to you have to form the pictures in the same size, the graphics in the same size the book is, and then you have to adjust. And it takes a hot minute. So continue, Mary.
Okay, so she sold one of Linda's books within 3 days. Within 3 more days, she had put Sally's Heart and My Angel book up. I'm like, I don't know how. But she didn't just put it up. She put it up in paperback and digital. And y'all, digital is it's a bear sometimes. So we went to lunch again. And by then I'd started co-hosting the show. And we were just doing the podcast occasionally. And at first I was just like a guest on the show, and the next thing I know, I'm co-hosting it with her. Yvonne has a way of sucking you in like a little vampire. But we were talking about my books, and I started naming off all my projects. And I'm going, well, I've got this book called If I Could Be a Mermaid, and If I Could Be a Giant, and If I Could Be a Butterfly, and Too Many Rules. And I want to finish this one about grandfathers, and I have another one that I want to do called Sharks Bite and Writers Write. I'm working on I'm working on the what do you call it? The illustrations. I had been doing them. I started the mermaid ones by hand, and then my younger son Aaron told me to use AI for my angel book, and that's what Yvonne helped me get through. And Yvonne just looked at me and she said, "Would you stop? Just stop." Like, but you asked me a question. I'm answering you. She said, "No, stop." After we go home, I want you to write a list of all your books and put them in order of the ones that are complete manuscripts and the ones, go down the line of the ones that are completed and the ones that you need to do a little more work on. If you've completed the book, send it to me. I got I don't know, 5 or 6. I had 6, y'all. I had 6 of them. Look at this. Look at this. 6 books. First book Yvonne did, If I Could Be a Mermaid. Look at those eyes. Look at those eyes. I was in love. I was totally in love. I was already in love with Yvonne, but the book. I had written this poem, and I was talking to my son, and I said, I wrote that poem when you were still in grammar school. You'll be 45 this summer. This book, I wrote a poem. I went to the beach and I started writing a poem about being a mermaid. And then that led me to write this book, If I Could Be a Butterfly. This one actually I wrote more recently. I wrote this one sitting around our patio one day, and a butterfly came by, and I'm like, "Oh, if I could be a butterfly, blah, 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 blah." But then there's a line in If I Could Be a Mermaid about being a giant. And that's how this book came about. And when this book came about, first thing Yvonne said, "That's a book about anti-bullying." I'm like, "No, it's not." She said, "Read it again, Mary. It is." And that's how we're going to market it. It's an anti-bullying book. Wow. Who knew? I sure didn't. I just wrote the poem. And this book was a book that just kind of came to me one day. Sharks Bite, Writers Write. And it's a book to encourage children to write. I would love to see that book in every elementary school to encourage the children to write, because there are things in there that tell you what to do and how to. Let me just randomly open a page and read it.
Homeschooling too. All of those books would be perfect for homeschoolers.
Yes. It says, "Let us see what's inside of your head, right from a desk, a table, or your bed. There is nothing that can stand in your way. The world wants to hear what you have to say. So get a pencil. Get some paper too." And then it goes on to the next page. But look at the image that Yvonne chose for that page. And when we were at Cocoa Village together one day, the day that Dar came to us and said she had an idea for a book called The Real Gift. This book is the one that got everybody's attention that day, but then this book was the one that sold. There were people buying that book for their nephews, their nieces. Some of them, there were two women who looked at the pictures and said, that looks just like Joshua and Cody, whoever, whatever their names were. But unbelievable, unbelievable how these things have come together. Giggles, and now that idea, yes, that idea is reality. Gwendolyn
And
said
ladies
that
and
about
gentlemen,
Dar. And
what
Dar's,
happened is Mary only sent me the manuscript. I took the manuscript and line by line went and looked for the right graphics. I have hundreds of graphics I did not use, but I downloaded them anyway so I could go back and pick the one that best fit that particular line.
and then she sends me the extras that I use to market the book. Probably 22 or so years ago, I worked as a Kelly girl. I was a temporary employee. And I worked almost every company in this county. It was a quick, easy way to make money without commitment, because Curtis and I were in the process of creating our own business. And while he was working on the business in the daytime, I was working to make money to pay the bills. And one of the jobs that I had, I was a receptionist for 9 months for a developer, a real estate developer. He created condos. And this guy walks in, I don't remember his name, but I can see his face as clear as day. I want to say his name might have been John. But he walks in, comes up to the desk, and he starts talking to me like he might know me, but he didn't. And I said, well, excuse me, but who are you? He said, oh, I'm the world's greatest grandfather. Boom! By lunch, I had written the book, The World's Greatest Grandfather. And Yvonne turned this, I just turned to one of my happiest pages. This is the American grandpa. Dar said actually it was slouch on the couch idea, but ended up writing the real gift first. Gwendolyn said yes, and I'm many books later with a cookbook still not finished.
It will be.
What this says on,
I told Gwendolyn it will be in God's time.
In God's time, absolutely. American Paws in red, white, and blue spoke English, Choctaw, French, and Hebrew. And every page has another name for a grandpa, like Greek papaws danced along without haste. Japanese sofus all bowed at the waist. Look at the pictures she picked for these. They look like they could be somebody's grandfather. There's another one I really like. Oh, I forgot. In the back of this book, she printed other pictures of my other children's books. Now that I've written so many books, I might not be able to do that anymore. But there was one, I'm going to see if I can find it fast, that I just thought was so, and they're not all the same grandpa. Some of them are young grandfathers, some of them are old grandfathers. Look at that. Those are the grandfathers from, it just showed up in their very best form to see who the best grandfather might be. Look at this grandpa. And look at these guys. They're from Samoa. So she did this book, and this one, if you notice, is a thicker book than this. So this one qualifies to be a hardcover.
As soon as I can get back.
And it had to have 79 pages, I think. But anyway, that we did. And then I had another book. I had gone, or before I had my first lunch in the summertime with Yvonne, I had gone to a children's book event in Vieira somewhere. Gwendolyn said, wild how that reordering happens. Absolutely. We are not in charge. And the minute we think we're in charge, God will throw something in our path to say, nope, not you. It's not about you. But I was at this children's book event, and at the time I only had Sally's Heart and My Angel book. I didn't have any other children's books. Young mother came up to me and she bought a copy of each, and we started talking. And she said, you know what I wish I could find was a book about stranger danger, but not one that says stranger danger. Could you do that? I said, I bet I could. Give me some time and let me see what I can do. So before I left that day, I'd already started on the story. And it is called Too Many Rules. Because on the back of the copy of the cover, Yvonne has, in a world where children are abducted daily, too many rules teaches a child how to understand why there are rules. Is that not the coolest, cutest little child? But there are pictures in here about, I get confused about the books I can write in and the ones made just for reading. You know, a kid needs to know you can't write in a library book, but it's okay to color in one of Gwendolyn's coloring books. And there's a lot of things in this book about, okay, it will be hard not to get in someone's car if they tell me they have puppies inside. But I have learned that bad strangers and Daddy love me so much and always want what's best for me. I get so busy exploring. No, they don't make up these rules just because they can. So I will try to learn them all and hope someday. Isn't that just like the coolest little puppy dog picture? And this kid's exploring. Down in my little ladybug. Yvonne took these 6 books. I just emailed her. They were completed in 6 weeks. Because I learned to let go and trust the process. Now, I'm looking at these trying to remember if there was a single one that I changed anything on. I don't think so. Maybe this one, I might have changed asked to change the font color. I don't remember. But I learned to let it go. And I learned to trust the process. And I will tell you, if you don't know how to let it go, think about this. 2 or 3 times a week, you probably back up your garbage in the house, tie the bag up, carry it out to the garbage bin, roll the bin out to the street for the garbage man to pick up the next morning. Do you go out during the night to check on your garbage? I don't. And now once or twice I've gone out to the garbage to retrieve something that I threw away accidentally. Like the instructions on how to change out a toilet flusher. But I don't check on my garbage because I have let it go. It's gone. It's out of my control. When I give my manuscript to Yvonne, it's done. She gives me the opportunity to read it before she puts it up on Amazon. Look at the cover. Tell me if I spelled your name wrong. Look at the back. Is the punctuation right? Once I say yes, go, it's done. Because if I come back later and say, oh, wait, too many rules, page 27, I left off a period. Can you go back and fix it? No. That's going to cost me $50 in annoyance fees. Not happening, Captain. Just not happening. So I finished this children's books. And I still got more to go. I'm not done yet.
No, she's not. Let's talk about.
Go ahead.
The books after she sent me the children's books was Steep Steps and Faith and Folly. Again, it was another test because when she sent me Faith and Folly, she had an idea of what she wanted the cover to look like. Well, I said, are you married to this cover? And she got offended, as she should have not gotten offended. Because when I sent her the idea that was different, and she allowed herself, gave herself permission to think with an open mind, it made sense. Tell them about that cover.
Faith and Folly. Now, I did send her an idea for this. I don't even know if this is the same one I gave you or not. But I had, because of the title, Faith and Folly, I had a picture of a nun standing there, all pious, and with her rosary beads hanging down. And I had the folly, the folio, I forget what you call him, but the foolish guy, the jester. And I had them, side by side. And I had, there is a word, and it's escaping me right now, but when you have the, one is all black, one is all white, it's kind of like the yin and yang. And that was what I had, only I had it in yellow and orange. And so Yvonne picked up on my idea for the color theme, and she made it with this glorious sunset, or the cross coming out of the sunset. And wait till you see the back, but I want to read it, what she wrote on the back. Because Yvonne, she takes our books. Now we can provide her with a synopsis. But if it's a long synopsis, she's going to cut it down because we don't need it to be so long. She wrote, as we go through life, we make decisions. Sometimes they are foolish and sometimes they are not so foolish. However, there is always someone more powerful to get us through. Faith and Folly is filled with such stories. Written by author Mary Brotherton, Faith and Folly is real life stories with real life lessons. And now remember the front. He's coming to you with his little mandolin and he's having a grand old time. On the back, he's walking away. He's headed toward the sun. This book does contain some of the stories that were in my first Go with Angels, but it also contains more stories and more foolish decisions that I made that, looking back now, I would never. Of course, I'm much older, and that has a lot to do with it. But even if I were younger, with the knowledge, what is it they say? If I knew then what I know now,
Yep.
I would never have been by myself and picked up a hitchhiker. But the story is in here of how that transpired and what I learned as a result. Every book, every story in here, I think I have pages to write on or not. I don't remember. No, this one doesn't have anything. But every story ends with a little lesson or a parable, or maybe it's just a question. Like, have you ever had an angel or good Samaritan stop to help you when you had a flat tire or other car troubles? Maybe you are the angel in someone's life. So every story ends with a little more than just the story. I think the next one that I sent to you was from the balcony.
That was a fun book. I love that book. That's one of my favorites.
From the balcony is absolute fiction. When my mother died, I had been her caregiver for almost 3 years. My version of Gwendolyn's Merlin, I tell you, sometimes I don't even know how to describe him. For 10 years, I would go on my vacation from the newspaper that I worked at. I would go spend a week with my mother. And for 10 years, I'd walk in, first thing I'd see on the dining room table was a legal pad where my sister had left instructions for things for me to do. And after a while, my mother noticed that every time you come to visit me, you're working. I said, well, Jane left me a list of things I need to do, like vacuum the carpet, or mop, steam clean the carpet, make Mama's bed, change out the sheets, flip the mattress, defrost the freezer. And my mother said, no, stop. You didn't come here to clean my house. Your brothers and sisters can do that. My mother she was fine for the first 5 years, but then after the last 5, she was using a walker and she was unable to do many of her household chores. And that was when she said, stop doing my work because your brothers and sisters can do this. I only see you once or twice a year. Now, I called my mother every single day. And I would hear her voice when she was sad or lonely or whatever. But I remember in 2011, maybe 2012, we went to visit. Curtis went with me. We went to visit, and I walked in her house, and the smell of urine was just unbelievable. And what was happening was she had a potty chair in her bedroom that she used at night, so she didn't have to walk to the bathroom. But then every morning she would go and empty out this potty. And she wasn't always able to reach her target. So the house smelled bad, and I could just see my mother was just declining. Just every time I'd see her, she was worse. So probably for 3 years, I would tell Curtis, somebody has to step up and do something. And I meant my brothers and sisters. Absolutely, I wasn't going to step up. I lived in Florida. She lived in South Carolina. What was I going to do? But that last year that I said that to Curtis, he looked at me, he said, well, you're somebody. Why don't you do something? And I said, what can I do? He said, you can walk back in that house and ask your mother if she would agree to us moving in with her. Now, for 15 years, Curtis and I had rented. And finally, we talked about buying houses, but I finally understood why we never could agree on one. It was because God was holding that space open. Because if we had owned a house, we wouldn't have been free to move in with my mother. So we moved in with her, and she died, as mothers do. And I was furious. There were so many reasons to be angry. I didn't like that, I was so heartbroken that one of my siblings gave me a pill and said, here, take this. I didn't question it. I just took it. And I was a zombie for 24 hours. I did not know. I still don't know what they gave me. I just know that I didn't cry uncontrollably. But the very next day, I said, no more pills. I want to feel this pain. I want to get this grief out. Because when my father died, I was too busy taking care of a toddler and a baby that I wouldn't allow myself to grieve. So 8 years later, it came gushing out at the most inopportune moment. And that's just not fun. Thank you, Gwen, for the hugs. But I was so angry after my mother died that I literally wanted to kill her. I did. There were some people that, if I had seen them, I probably would have. But by then, I'd moved back to Florida. So I wrote stories. Now there was, the From the Balcony came about not directly as a result of my mother's death. There was a point in my life where I wanted to shove somebody over a balcony. And,
We've all had those moments.
but I wrote these little stories. They're just short stories. Oh, I just thought of another book that I don't think I have. But I'll talk to you about that in a minute. But what Yvonne wrote on the back of this, and I'll show you the back of the cover. See, look at the front. The back of the cover has her falling off. I love it. Yvonne wrote, "What would you do if you had a neighbor who just wouldn't leave you alone? He was there on the spot every time you went outside or brought in groceries. What would you do if you were married to a man whose ex-wife used their child to get him back? What would you do if you were tired of being a muse to an ungrateful author? What would you do if an online date was not what it appeared to be? What would you do if the neighbors in the next apartment fought every day and night?" The answers are here in From the Balcony. Now I will tell you, there's a story in here called Cherry Pie. I wrote it, but it is based on a true story that my son Aaron told me after his online date. So, yes, Gwendolyn, writing therapy. So then, here's another book that I've been working on for umpteen years. A lot of these poems were written during my first marriage. It's called The One Left Behind. This image here, I created it with AI because there's an angel named Metatron. I don't know if y'all know who he is or not. You'll learn about him in A Journey with Angels when I finish it. And now that Amazon has me, not Amazon, and Facebook has me in the corner, I can work on that book and not have to worry about social media for a while. But Metatron comes to me from time to time, and he just gives me these slideshows. And it's up to me to interpret what I'm supposed to do with them. And one of the slides was of a woman kneeling down crying. And so I created this with AI, and I sent it to Yvonne. I said, "This is an idea of what I would like for the cover. If you don't like it, fine, but this is just my thoughts." Yvonne wrote on the back, "All of us at one time or another have been left behind by someone we love. It could be due to death, breakup, or just because they left. The loss, the grief, and the pain is real. We don't just get over it. At some point, we do learn to move forward. Mary Brotherton brings all of the emotions to life in The One Left Behind." Look at the image she picked for that back cover. The corner has its advantages. Yes, Gwen. We can share crayons. I love it. This has some short stories, and right now, Andrea Dean Van Scoyoc is turning these stories and poems into the most amazing little videos. I cannot tell you how much it means to me. I want to find one of the really short ones and just read it to you because I think it's really cool. Um, it's called My Own Agony. Missing you hurts like an impacted wisdom tooth. I know I will see you again soon. I want us to be together now. I want to howl at the moon like a lovesick wolf. Why must I miss you so? It's as unfair as Auschwitz. I know life is not fair, but this is agony. And just like I did with whatever that other book was, Faith and Folly, I have a little life lesson at the end of this. And this one says, have you ever missed someone, living or deceased, that caused you physical pain? Write your story here. All of these poems and all of these things have room for you to write. And I love this book. I've sent it to a few people who've lost loved ones. And then that brings me to the last book that I have published. There are 3 that I can still talk about. Plus, I don't think I have a copy of 1,000 Words. I've got to look and see if I have a copy. I might, but I don't. I think I might, but I don't have it here. I just don't have it on my stack that I got for today. But my final book that I do have a copy of, I was so tickled. Woke up one morning, and as I am sitting on the edge of the bed, I see a little girl. And Curtis and I don't have any granddaughters. I have one grandson. And I know we didn't have a sleepover with the Girl Scouts. So I just said, well, actually the little girl just looked at me and said, hello. I'm like, hi, who are you? Ramonda. She said, come on, I need you to write my story. And you notice the 1111. It's also on the back. This was turned into a graphic novel. This is what Yvonne put on the back, my synopsis. Ramonda Highfield was born with a purpose. That purpose was to give life to another. At the age of 13, she did just that. While this novel is fiction, this did happen. Oh, and look at the first page I turned to. Nana. I got so much information from Ramonda. And then I talked to Yvonne one day and I said, guess who I've been talking to? She said, I don't know. Who? Santa Claus? I said, no, Ramonda. So Yvonne filled in some gaps for me. And now all of these pictures you notice are in color. Usually my images are not in color. And Christian was one of the stories that came the second day. Ramonda talked to me for 8 hours straight. Told me what to write, how to write it. She even said I want it to be a graphic novel. But then Ramonda disappeared. At the end of the day, she just shut up. I didn't hear another word from her. And then the next day I was talking to Yvonne. She said, how's your book coming with Ramonda? I said, well, I'm not finished, but I don't know where to go. And Ramonda's not talking. She goes, well, you know her daddy's in the hospital right now. I know that Ramonda could have been with me and her daddy at the same time, but she didn't want to be. And almost to the minute, when Yvonne made her announcement on Facebook that John was out of the hospital, or out of the surgery and in recovery, almost to the minute, Ramonda shows up and says, okay, let's finish. And we finished the book. And what I love about this is we imagine what Ramonda might look like if she had lived to be.
She would be 23 years old this year.
Crazy. So those are all the books that I have with me because I needed to get copies and I'd forgotten to even ask. Lizard Patrol was a book, it only has 19 chapters. It's also a graphic novel.
Yes.
It is the story of what I imagine my cat would have said about specific incidences in his life. From the day we adopted him from a terrible, horrible, mean person to the day he died in his own bed, which was the day before I had planned to take him to the vet to have him put to sleep, and I prayed that he would just go to sleep and not wake up, and that's what he did. We had this cat for 19 years, and I did not plan it, but I wrote 19 chapters. And y'all, oh my heavens to Betsy, Yvonne turned it into an audiobook. And it has Kenny sounding like he's from the deepest part of the South, of the Southern South, not just the Southern South, but he's from the South side of the South. The voice that she picked for that is unbelievable. Unbelievable. The voice that she picked for Steep Steps sounds like one of the first minor characters named Marcus Hall. He makes a great narrator. She chose a little Georgia Peach to narrate Ramonda's extended warranty. The other two books that I'm waiting to get back are Grandma's Heart Attacked Her and Perfectly Perfect. Both of those books were written after my heart attack. Both of those books were written after I woke up from a nap. Because I nap a lot. I'm like a cat myself these days. I stretch, I walk, I eat.
I nap.
I nap. Not napping as much as I used to, but I woke up one day with this busy ladies, mind-boggling what y'all do. Dara, you got no idea. It boggles my mind as well. But the book, Perfectly Perfect, I thought I was going to write a book for an adult. I started scribbling it down, and then I realized, no, this needs to be for children. It's about friendship, and it's about how children don't see color or size or abilities or challenges. They just see other kids to play with. And Grandma's Heart Attacked Her is written as if it's from a child's perspective. You've got an active grandma who 1 minute is playing with the child, and the next minute the child finds out Grandma's in the hospital. What now? Oh, she'll come home, she'll bounce out of it, everything will be fine. But Grandma can't move as fast as she used to. Grandma's not eating like she used to. What's with all these pills she has to take? So we did that one. And the only other book that I don't have a copy of, but I think I just it's in the box or something, is 1,000 Words. And it's 42 stories. Each story is 1,000 words long. And each story has an image to go with it. They're all in black and white because we didn't want to charge too much money to buy the book. It started because I found a copy of a copy of a copy of a photograph of my grandfather, who at the turn of the 20th century was a clown with two of his brothers in the Barnum and Bailey Circus. And I'm sure this had to have been taken after the circus performance for the day. They were with about 5 or 6 other clowns, and they all looked exhausted. You could see behind the mask the paint. And I wrote a story about it. And when I finished, I'm looking at it, and it is exactly 1,000 words. And I thought, cute. Okay, no big deal. Then I started looking at other stories, and I had others that were, some of them were exactly 1,000 words, or some of them might have been 1,002 or 1,003. Well, I just trimmed them up, made them all 1,000 words. Some are true stories, and some are fiction. And it was a lot of fun to come up with doing that. It was cool, Gwendolyn. But I think I'm at the end of my story.
For the moment. She's at the end of her story for a moment. There are more yet to come, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
And the thing that we have to understand is Mary's journey did not happen overnight. Mary, like most artists, and this is no slight on Mary, because Mary and I have talked about this many times, we like to control our environment. And when I started Midnight Publishing, it was the idea that God said, Yvonne, I've got a plan for you, and you need to go do this. And I'm going, okay, God, I'm not going to argue, because my two friends had already asked me, what's going to happen now? The one had never been published. He was supposed to be published. It was a children's coloring book. And I said, let me go home and pray about it and think about it. Well, I learned a long time ago, be careful what you ask for. Because if it's already in God's plan, He's going to give it to you. And if you complain about it, shame on you. So I took this on to, like Mary said, do my books and do my friends at church books. And then I just put a call out there. This is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. Anybody that wants to be a part of it, come on. Well, the next one was Jason Gellhardt, the ferryman. And then Andrea said, Yvonne, do all of my books. So she sent me all of her books. And then God just started sending me the people as He knew they needed to be here. And if Mary hadn't come on board, and if we hadn't had a come to Jesus meeting, Mary would not have survived her heart attack, because it was a widowmaker.
Yeah.
And you don't come back from that. Go ahead, honey.
The reason they call it the widowmaker, this is what the doctors actually call the lower anterior descending vein. It is the one that if it is blocked, it can stop your heart. My heart, that vein, the LAD, was 100% blocked. And several other veins or blood vessels were at various stages of blockage. They're handling the smaller ones with medication. They put one stent in that bigger one. The doctor said if I had been 5 to 10 minutes later getting to the hospital, I would be dead. I believe, and Yvonne agrees with me, if I had not learned to let go and trust the process, God would have just taken me out and said, well, she's not learning her lessons. We'll deal with her later. There's a reason I'm here. There is a reason that I'm allowed to continue to serve. Doris said, God wins, and Gwendolyn said, absolutely. No doubt about it. I really believe that if I had still been on the fence and micromanaging, of course, Yvonne doesn't deal with micromanagers at all.
No. Mm.
But if I'd been trying to micromanage her with my books, I would not have survived that heart attack. And Aaron swears that I survived so that I could watch him get published. And now he says he's got 2 more books minimum to finish, so I've got to live with him. And he says, by the time I'm 70, I hope to be going to Dragon Con, and I want to wear a big cloak and a big hat, and I'll be signing my books. I said, well, I might be on a scooter, but I'll only be 96. I'm coming too. So he said that's another reason for him to live, to see me with him at Dragon Con. I am in awe because I've talked to other women who've told me how very painful their heart attacks were. Mine did not hurt. My shoulder hurt before, in the months or weeks before my heart attack, but the actual heart attack did not hurt. I had other symptoms, and those symptoms were cold sweats, nausea, dizziness, blurry vision. And then the one that really let me know I was having a heart attack was my hands felt like they were made of lead. I could not lift my hands from my sides. They were just sitting on the bed, and I could not lift my hands. So, and I couldn't breathe. I was struggling to breathe. Other than that, I was not in any pain. And if I could have just gone back to bed to go to sleep, I would have.
And then she
Well, I did, actually. Curtis said, lie down, I'm calling the ambulance. And I passed out.
and if she'd have died, I'd have been pissed off at her. I'd have probably raised her from the dead myself and killed her again. Because I would have been really...
Yeah, because I wasn't wrapped in duct tape.
Yeah, exactly. Because
And no tarp.
this woman contributes so much to this organization, and neither one of us get paid for it. We don't have a budget. We don't have money. We don't charge our authors. We do it for the love of service. So with that, since I have to go bowling and my ride's getting antsy, we will close today's show, and next Wednesday we will pick up where we left off today. Because Mary's
I gotta finish another book.
Mary's got more stories.
I've got so many.
And we're not done talking to her. So, my darling, I love you so much.
I love you.
And I appreciate you so much. And I'm so grateful you're in my life.
Y'all don't know. It does my heart good to see Dar and Gwendolyn in the chats, and knowing that we're helping, like yesterday with our class, our free class once a month on the first Tuesday?
First Tuesday at 1 o'clock.
First Tuesday of every month at 1 o'clock, we offer a free class. And yesterday's was on scammers, spammers, and predators. I will have to find out what next month will be and do the update on that online.
So,
A heart and a hug from Dar. Thank you.
so until next Wednesday at 10:30, we're going to say adieu, adieu, adieu. Arrivederci, hasta luego,
Ciao.
bonsoir. And keep sending us books. There's so much going
Yes.
on here.
Can't wait.
I love you, my darling.
I love you. Go bowl.
Okay,
Score
soon it will be over. 3 more times.
Awesome. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.